I've listed and sold over 1,000 homes in my career, and I've also coached over 6,000 agents to help them become top listing agents. And there are 8 truths about being a listing agent that A, no one talks about, and B, I wish that I knew, that I'm going to share with you in this video. So before we jump in, I know a lot of you have been asking, hey, when is your new listing agent script book coming out? Well, it is live. It's now available. It's 100% free. And there's a link to that right in the description if you want to download a copy. All right, so let's start off with truth number 1, which is that building trust is more important than being liked. Now, what does this actually mean? So here's what happens. When most people get into the business of real estate sales, they tend to, for the most part, not everybody, but they tend to work with a lot of buyers. And that's fine. But to work with buyers, really what's happening there is you're focusing on getting people to like you as a form of conversion. And so you spend a lot of your time doing things to do exactly that, to get somebody to like you. You're telling them what they think they want to hear, et cetera, et cetera. To be a listing agent, I'm talking about a listing agent that is actually successful. You have to really let go of whether or not you're liked and focus on being trusted. And so here's what I'm talking about. If you're going to succeed in serving your clients and helping them to actually navigate the market, get their houses on the market, and get it sold, you are going to have to shoot people straight. You're going to have to say things to sellers, confront sellers on the truth. You're going to have to be able to cut through all the BS and talk about things that sometimes the sellers aren't going to want to hear. That's the only way you can truly serve your client. And that's the difference between being liked and actually serving your client, is to tell them the truth. And in doing so, you're building the trust and credibility with your clients. And through that, if they end up liking you, that's just a bonus. But I'll tell you what most agents do that are new listing agents is they have a really hard time telling sellers the no BS truth around the condition their home is in, how much their home is actually worth, because they're so worried that if they tell the seller the truth, that they won't get the listing. And so what ends up happening is they start getting these listings based on the BS they told the seller. They end up getting listings that are all overpriced, that end up not selling, causing these agents so much stress and anxiety. Why? Because the way they got the listing was by telling the seller what they thought they wanted to hear, such that they would get the listing. They have a listing philosophy instead of a list to sold philosophy. In other words, they're so focused on obtaining the person's relationship and getting them to like them. Your home is beautiful. We can get whatever price you want, that they end up as a disservice to the client later. And the client ends up disliking them at a later point in time because they're like, well, dude, you told me that this is what we can get for the property. Now, all of a sudden you're backtracking. This is why sellers get so pissed off. When you go back to them a month later and ask them to reduce the price, it's because when you listed the property, it was all sunshine and rainbows. It was all no problem. That price, no problem. Everything was no problem because you were so focused on getting them to like you. Then you didn't shoot them straight. When you knew the truth, you didn't tell it to them because you were scared that they wouldn't list the property with you. So you got what you wanted. They said, okay, wow, this sounds pretty good. They list the property with you, and now you have a problem. You can't sleep at night. Why? Because you know that you took the listing under false expectations, but you didn't have the courage to tell them the truth because you were so focused on being liked that it blurred the lines of you acting inside of integrity and telling the person the truth, even though maybe the seller didn't want to hear it. That's what it's going to take for you to really succeed as a listing agent. And this is the difference between serving versus pleasing. And most of you would tell me, you would use your words. You would say, well, yes, I'm looking to serve my clients at the highest level. What I think most people do is they're looking to please the client. And so they make things seem just way better than they are. And when you're listing property, you have to tell them that, you know what? Sometimes selling a home can be very stressful because buyers will look at the home and not give us feedback. Other agents will show the property and leave all the lights on. They won't remove their shoes when we ask them to remove their shoes. All these things are a reality that most agents don't tell the seller because they're afraid if they bring any of this stuff up that the seller might get scared, and not scared, but they'll get upset and then not list the home with them. It's actually the opposite. The more you can shoot people straight, the more trust and rapport and credibility you're actually bringing. You see, there's all the science to back this up too. I'm not going to get into too much psychology in this video, but there's a lot of research that social psychologists have done that when it comes to building trust, when you can speak in a way that might be perceived to go against your own interest, that when you talk about potential downsides to things, it's the fastest way to build trust. And the opposite is also true, in that if everything that you say is no problem and it's all good and there's never any issue and it's, oh yeah, nothing can go wrong, and you make things seem better all the time than they really are, that's when people actually sit back and start to question and start to say, I don't know if I can trust this person. They sound like a shyster. And people can tell when they're being bamboozled. And so that's something that you really, really have to focus on if you're going to really succeed as a listing agent. Now, truth number 2, having control over your time has a cost. All right. Now, most people want to be listing agents because they can do, well, just that. They can control their time. They can work from anywhere in the world. They can go and secure a listing and they can service that listing while they're in Hawaii for a week, while other agents are showing the property in the local market. It allows them to not only leverage their time, but to leverage their income. They can handle a lot more listings than they can buyers, because buyers, as you already know, take up a ton of time. Now, there's a cost, however, associated to getting that if you're going to be a listing agent, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to pay this cost? What is the cost? The cost is discipline and focus. Now, you might hear that and say, well, what's the big deal? Well, I'll tell you the big deal. In coaching over 6,000 agents, I will tell you, this is the biggest problem in our industry. The biggest problem in our industry is that you are all 1099 independent contractors, that you all came into the business and wanted to be your own boss. And as a result of that, we cannot even get you to show up the same way you did when you worked for somebody as a W-2 employee. In other words, most of you worked harder for somebody else and somebody else's dreams than you do for your own dreams. Not all of you, but a lot of agents worked way harder for other entrepreneurs' dreams and ambitions in life than they do for their own family's ambitions. It's really, really sad, but it's the truth. And so the cost of being a highly paid, highly respected listing agent, one who can work 3 or 4 days a week, no nights, no weekends, chasing buyers all over town for months and months and months. The cost of that is discipline and focus, specifically the discipline around following a schedule. The discipline to prospect every single day. The discipline to following a schedule every single day. And so most agents don't have that discipline. And so they're not willing to pay the cost to get the benefit. And then as a result, they're left working 7 days a week. They're always on their phone. They're always responding to things. They're running around like crazy all the time, all stressed out, unhealthy diet, lack of sleep. They never work out because they don't have time for anything. And so the opposite of that, if you want the opposite of that, and you can't have that. Most people are like, oh, you can't have that in real estate. That is not true. That is not true. At the point of when I was selling over 100 homes a year, I was doing it 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. No Friday, all weekends off. You absolutely can do that, but it requires a ton of discipline and a ton of focus. All right, truth number 3. You must master outbound lead generation if you're going to be a listing agent. Now, why is that important? Well, I'll tell you why. If you look at all of the lead generation options that are available to real estate agents right now, I'm making this in January 2025. For the most part, okay, I could just see somebody commenting, well, yeah, what about this thing? I know there's some onesies and twosies, but for the most part, most lead generation, most advertising, most marketing, most internet leads get you what? Let's be real honest. Most of it's getting you buyer leads. Most of the Facebook leads and most of the Google PPC and most of the platforms and Zillow and Realtor.com and Boomtown and Commissions Inc. and all those companies, for the most part, are getting you buyer leads. No one has really cracked the code on seller lead generation, and therefore puts us in a position that if you're going to really build a listing focused business, that for the most part, you're going to have to do something that you don't want to do, that most agents are trying to avoid at all cost, which is picking up the phone and calling homeowners directly. And this is what most people don't want to do. And this is why they spend a career avoiding that and just having to work with buyers, because they won't master outbound lead generation. They just want it inbound. I don't want to reach out to anybody. I'm going to wait for people to reach out to me, or I'm going to give a company my credit card and have them go find me people. I know those people want to buy a house. Yes, some of them are sellers. I get that. But if you're going to sell 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 houses a year and them all be listings, you're going to understand that it's primarily going to come through outbound prospecting. Look at any top listing agent across the country. I'm not talking about, there's a lot of agents that sell 50, 60, 70 houses a year, but a lot of them are mostly buyers. Even these top producers at companies, even the top producer at my brokerage before I sold my company, she's phenomenal. She sells over 100 homes a year, 70% buyers. If you're going to be a listing agent primarily, it's going to be because most of your time, energy, and effort is spent talking to people who own homes that want to sell a home. And as a result, it must be prospecting based. Why? Because there isn't really any type of marketing or advertising that can get you 10 or 15 listings per month. Not yet, anyways. And so if you're going to be a listing agent, listen, this is a truth. This is what this video is about. You're going to have to learn how to prospect and how to go and generate conversations with homeowners. All right. Truth number 4, listing property requires emotional maturity. So many times I coach these agents that are newer listing agents, and the emotional bandwidth that it takes to carry listings, because it comes with such responsibility, is such that a lot of agents can't handle. The stress, the responsibility, the anxiety, the guilt. Because remember what I talked about at the beginning of the video? A lot of agents carry around this heavy weight of guilt because they know they BS their way into getting the listing in the first place, that they didn't tell the seller the truth, and now they just feel so guilty. It's like, man, I know that thing was overpriced, and I took it anyways, and I made it seem like it was a non-issue. It's an issue. And then the seller's blowing them up like, why is the property not selling? What are you doing to sell my home? What's going on? What's an update? Why don't we have any showings? When are we going to get an offer? And you're just sitting there stressed out, can't sleep at night. It's going to require you to have a high level of emotional intelligence. Dealing with sellers, real estate is a very emotional process, okay? But primarily for sellers, it is more stress and more anxiety than what buyers deal with. The emotion that buyers have, for the most part, I'm not saying they don't have any stress, but for the most part, the emotion that most buyers have is excitement. The emotion that most sellers have is stress and anxiety. There are some studies out there, I don't know how true they are, that suggest that the top 3 stresses that someone will go through in their life is dealing with a loved one's death, going through a divorce, and then number 3 is selling a house. So you're dealing with somebody that is going through a very, very stressful process. And if you're going to be a successful agent, you're going to have to be really good at dealing with clients that are highly stressed out. So all the conversations aren't all, sunshine and rainbows like it is with buyers. That's why most agents just fall to working with buyers. It's just way easier. The whole process. When I say easier, I know you have to show. I'm talking about from the skills perspective. Buyers, it's all like, oh, this one's so exciting. Hey, we scheduled the inspection. The buyers control the process. Selling a home, you don't really know what's going to happen. You don't know how many showings you're going to get. You don't know when you're going to get an offer. You don't know what the house is going to inspect like. You're going to know what's going to happen with the appraisal. You don't know if the buyer's qualified, if they're not qualified. Did they get cleared from underwriting? Did they not? It's on pins and needles the whole time. And you have to be the calm. You have to bring a sense of certainty and a sense of calm to your clients that you don't have to deal with when you work with buyers. Truth number 5. You must actually know the market if you're going to be a listing agent. So unlike working with buyers, you're just showing property, right? But to actually get properties sold, it isn't. So many agents get caught up with this. They believe in the myth of property marketing. Let me explain. The myth of property marketing. This is agents really they've almost the bias here is so deep that we've actually bamboozled ourselves. Let me explain. So for years and years and years and years and years, I don't know who came up with it. We would say, all right, your listing presentation is going to be built on communicating these what seem to be sexy marketing things designed to impress the seller enough that the seller decides to list the home with you. Even though we know inside of the industry, price is the only thing that sells homes. But we're going to go and make up a lot of these things to impress sellers. Like we're going to make a website for your property. We're going to do advertising around, on Facebook and social media. We know, and if you're being honest, none of that stuff actually sells the home. We know that. We know that open houses don't sell homes. Yeah, once in a while, maybe 1-2% of properties that sell through open house. But we know 99% of all that stuff is designed to try to impress sellers enough that the seller says, ooh, wow, let me list a property with you. When it's all fluff, it's all BS. How do I know that? Because you don't even do half the shit that you say you're going to do at the listing appointment. And so what is the point? The point is that what actually moves real estate, what actually sells real estate is your understanding of what is the competition doing? I have to understand when I talk about the market, I'm talking about other properties that your client's home is going to directly compete with. So how often do you actually go and walk through the competition? How much research are you doing on the competition? When I coach an agent, one of the first things I have them do is I have them go through this exercise to score the active competition. They get a scorecard, they go do agent previews, they score the property, they track the properties that are in their market from the time they hit the market to the time they leave the market. And they do a CMA, they do market research, they see how many showings it has, they see how long it took to sell, they look at the list to sold price ratio, they look and see what neighborhoods are selling quicker than other neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. That's what actually sells houses, is your ability to really have your finger on the pulse and then be able to actually go to a listing appointment and communicate your expertise such that you are an authority. And so most agents can't do that. So they go to a listing appointment and they not only do they BS the sellers on the condition of their home and how much the home is worth, but then they further the BS. They further the fluff. They don't talk about what actually sells the home. They try to wow them through all these little marketing gimmicks. And then they wonder why the seller at the end of the presentation says, yeah, this sounds good. We talked to another agent that does a lot of the similar stuff. Can you do it for half the cost? Can you lower your commission? Why? Because you've just commoditized yourself. If all of you are going to listing appointments saying, okay, we're going to do drone photos, we're going to do 3D this, we're going to do floor plans, we're going to do open houses, we're going to do flyers, we're going to do social media, we're going to do this, and everybody's saying the same shit, regardless of what company they're at, then the sellers are left to say, okay, everyone's doing about the same thing. Then we just have to figure out the person who's going to do it for the least amount of money. See, you're competing on commodity instead of competing on value. All right. Truth number 6. You must have sales skills. You must have sales skills if you're going to be a listing agent. To work with buyers, you don't need a lot of sales skills. Remember we talked about, if you're going to list property at great scale, it's going to be because it's outbound prospecting based. This means you're going to have to pick up the phone and call strangers, people you don't know. That's going to require a skill. And then once you're on that conversation, you have to actually have skill such that you can set an appointment with an absolute stranger. And then, oh, by the way, furthermore, then you have to actually go meet with the stranger and out of thin air, create so much value in your presentation such that a complete stranger says, yeah, I'll sign a contract to list my home with you and pay you a whole bunch of money. All of that's going to require sales skills. So in saying that, that means that you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to record yourself. You're going to have to get a role play partner. You're going to have to do a lot of things that is so rare in the real estate industry. It's so funny when I talk to brokers and I start coaching broker owners and team leaders, and I bring up, like, the second I bring up role play, they kind of chuckle a little bit because they understand the importance, but they know how rare it is. Or an agent that I'm coaching and they are role playing in the office with their role play partner with another agent that I'm coaching, and everyone else in the company, in the office, is kind of looking at them like weird, like, oh my God, they're role playing. It's that weird. And that's why, 20% of the agents do 80% of the business because we're the weird ones. I would be fine being weird and make all the money, no problem, than to be normal and be broke. No problem. When you leave the herd won't like it. And just know that's another thing, not truth on this video, but as you start to succeed, you start to get more listings, you're going to have a bullseye on your back. And the other agents in the office aren't going to like it because they're losers and they don't like to see other people win. It's just like crab theory. Crabs try to leave the herd, and crabs don't like it so much so that they will kill the crab to not let that crab leave the herd. Now, thankfully, it's not that bad, but when you try to elevate, you've seen it all the time. That brings out the hate in everybody that is surrounding you. All right, let's talk about truth number 7. You're going to have to have a little bit of upfront capital. Okay? You have to have a little bit of cash to invest in the business because there are going to be some hard costs as you start to list property. Right? You're going to have signs, you're going to have all the marketing BS stuff that you're going to have to fulfill on. You're going to have professional photos. Maybe you're going to do 3D tours. You're going to do floor plans. You're going to hopefully do some grand opening events. Hopefully you're going to do some private open house events. All of that's going to require to invest some capital up front before you get paid. And so again, this video is about you having the truth. And the truth is you're going to have some capital to go out there and start securing listings. With buyers, you don't need any capital, right? There's no investment that you need to take on a buyer client. And then truth number 8 is you have to have systems and processes. You can't just wing it. If you're going to take on a new client, you have to think about this in terms of how does a real business actually operate? If you think about, okay, hopefully you don't go through McDonald's that all too often, but the cheeseburger that's made in Nashville is the same way it's made in Dallas. You probably couldn't even tell the difference. Why? Well, because that business is probably the poster child of systems and processes. Because they've been working on it for so long. You have to have the exact same thing if you're going to be a successful listing agent. You have to have step 1, step 2, step 3. You have to have a system that you put listings through such that you can communicate it to the seller so that the seller has a world-class client experience. And something I always talk about, which is the best form of new client acquisition is the current client experience. Think about that. Somebody who's experiencing you in the services in your offering right now is the best form of new client acquisition, because depending on that experience, hopefully it's a positive one, they become an advocate. They go out there and start spreading the word how great of an experience you put them through. If that experience, you have no systems, you have no processes, you have no checklist, you have nothing, and that experience is an absolute nightmare, like it was for me when I started in the business, and your clients can't wait for it to be over, and they never want to talk to you again, and you resent the client because this is an absolute shit show, well, they don't tell anybody about you other than how bad it was. And that keeps you on the hamster wheel of lead generation forever. And to see all of this put into action, I just recently did an agent workshop with one of the agents that I'm coaching. He breaks down exactly how he's earning $20,000 a month in just his 3rd year. You can click right here to watch it next.